Hi, this is Teresa again with Ratchet Politics and the Hosea 46 Project. Before I start, please follow me on Instagram at Ratchet Politics, all one word, or the Hosea 46 Project, HOSEA, the numbers 46 Project. So today I wanted to talk about why the census deadline continues to go back and forth. Over the past few weeks, it was October 31st, and then it was September 30th. Then was back to October 31st, and then it moved to October 5th, and now, at least for now, it is October 31st. So why did that happen? It happened, the short answer is because the president is trying to get around the Constitution and the courts and exclude undocumented immigrants so that states will have less members of Congress, or certain states will have less members of Congress. And so I'm going to explain how that works. The census usually starts, again, every 10 years. It usually starts on April 1st. So April 1st is the date that you start getting things in the mail, the date that people generally start going door to door and asking you to complete the census. Census Day has been April 1st since 1930. The census usually ends around July, August. And so it goes from, April 1st to, July, August. And by December 31st, the President of the United States must receive the census count. Not your personal information, nothing like that. Again, I talked about it in a previous video. The president must get the total population count from the census. The reason the president must get this information is because it is the president's duty, one of the president's duties, to determine how many members of the House of Representatives go to each state. So, in the legislative branch of our government, there are three branches. In the legislative branch, the branch that makes all the laws, our members of Congress, there are two chambers. There's the United States Senate, which has 100 members, just a flat number, 2 members for every state. And the other chamber, which is the United States House of Representatives that I'm talking about right now, there are 435 members, no more, no less. It's capped at 435, unless something changes way down the line. And so that 435 is divided among the states. So a smaller state may have, 3 representatives. Larger states may have, 20 or 30. But all the states added together, all the representatives, always equals 435. And so it's the president's job to determine whether or not, again, I've mentioned before, I live in New York, and 10 years ago, we had 29 members, and now we have 27. That's based off of the president's distribution of representatives to New York. And that distribution was based off of how many people in New York 10 years ago completed the census, which is why, again, it is extremely important for you to complete your census wherever you are, because it determines how many people you have, your state has, representing your state's interests in Washington, D.C., in the United States House of Representatives as part of Congress. So, going back to Census Day. Census Day starts April 1st, wraps up usually sometime late July, early August. And under the U.S. Code, Title 13, the president has to get the total population no later than 9 months after Census Day. So 9 months after April 1st is December 31st. Now, the president needs this information by this date so that the president can then take a very complicated formula, which I won't even tell you the name of it. You can look it up. And take that formula and determine, based on population count, how many representatives go to each state. We are in the midst of a pandemic, of course. And so although Census Day is still April 1st, it started April 1st. That was the beginning of the pandemic. And so with all of the things being shut down and so many other challenges that we faced and continue to face, it was determined that the census deadline would not be July, August. It would be October 31st to give people a chance to complete it. One of the reasons is people weren't going door to door at the beginning of the pandemic asking you to complete the census because it wasn't safe. And so to account for time with people having access to, whether it was having access to the census or certain technology, more time was given this year, unlike previous years, to complete the census. Now, that also has to do with the fact that a lot of times there are certain populations that are just harder to count or that are underrepresented in our population. Usually immigrants or undocumented immigrants, minority communities, and people that live in rural communities or communities that are hard to reach by someone who goes door to door. And so this extra time was given to hopefully capture usually hard to get populations counted in the census. All right, now, if during a normal year, the census concludes around July, August, and that's enough time to get the population count to the president by December 31st, if the census deadline is moved to October 31st, there's no way that the Census Bureau can provide the president with an accurate count by the normal date of December 31st. The Census Bureau has said it's just not going to be possible. There will not be an accurate count. We won't be able to actually do that. That was not good enough for our current president. And so in July, the president decided to issue an order asking that the census end a month early on September 30th. There were groups like the Urban League and the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, and other groups that took this administration to court. And as I mentioned in the previous video, the court found in their favor and said that this administration could not end the count early. There was no reason. They could not end it on September 30th. What the court did not say specifically, or explicitly rather, was that now the date goes back to October 31st. It was assumed, but the court did not say it explicitly. So a few days after the court made that decision, this administration, through the Department of Commerce, the department that oversees the census, tweeted that we're going to end the census October 5th. So the date was October 31st. The president moved it to September 30th. He got sued. They didn't like it, so they still tried to end it early on October 5th. The same group went back to the court and said, we need you to be very clear on your decision. And so the court clarified and said, listen, you couldn't end it on September 30th. I'm telling you, it has to go back to the original date of October 31st. And so that's where we are now. The reason why I say it's October 31st for now is because what happens when you don't like when you don't like an outcome in court, you appeal. And so the current administration is appealing that decision from the federal district court in California. And if they continue to lose, they're going to try to take it all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And if the appeals court or the Supreme Court determines that the census can conclude before October 31st, then we're going to be looking at another changed deadline, which is why I cannot express enough the reason to complete the census. Now, the reason why the president wanted the numbers pushed to December 31st is because no matter who's president, who we elect president next month, the president does not get sworn in until the following January, or the new president rather. So the current president will still be president December 31st. And he wanted that data while he was still in office so that he could still attempt to curtail the Constitution and the courts and try to figure out a way to exclude undocumented immigrants from the count for the purpose of assigning representatives to the United States House of Representatives, especially states that have high numbers of undocumented immigrants. He was hoping to exclude undocumented immigrants from the final count so that those states like California that usually fight him on his immigration policies would have less members in the United States House of Representatives. So that is the reason why the date has continued to fluctuate. That is the reason why the deadline has continued to get pushed. And this is why politics are ratchet. Please continue to follow me on my platforms. Have a good night.